Now, we have a lot of candidates in the Futurense US pathway who are good quality candidates who have many options. Now, what made you choose University of Buffalo?
One of the things you'll see at the University at Buffalo is this collaborative spirit between the schools. There are 29 different partnerships across the university to enable you to get an MBA.
Wow. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of our podcast Talent First. Today I have with me someone who's not just a very well-renowned academic, professor, a thought leader in this industry. He's someone that I have been following his work for some time. There's a lot to learn from. Hi Professor Ayya, how are you doing?
Very good, very good. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you, sir. So let's start with your journey a bit. What we realize is you've been in the US for I would say, 40, 50 years? So when did you come to US for the first time?
Yes. So I'm going to start with, I completed my undergraduate degree, a B.Tech in mechanical engineering from IIT Bombay, and moved to the United States in 1982.
Okay.
I came here primarily to do a master's in industrial engineering, and I was transitioning from mechanical to industrial engineering. I started my career at Syracuse University, which is where I first landed in 1982. And in January 84, I moved to Georgia Tech to get a PhD in industrial and systems engineering.
Wow.
And if you say, how do you go from mechanical to industrial engineering? As part of any engineering degree, you do a capstone project.
Right.
So my capstone project was with Raleigh Wolf in Mumbai. And at Raleigh Wolf, there was a question they had, and there was this technology called group technology or cellular manufacturing. And so they wanted to reorganize their plant to leverage the benefits of cellular manufacturing. And I spent the entire year writing computer code, getting a solution.
Right.
I thought I had this wonderful solution that satisfied all the technical requirements, till the vice president said, how much is it going to cost me, and what's the value proposition? And these were the two things I had not thought of.
Right.
So I realized as an engineer, I could come up with great solutions, but if those solutions did not have an economic price tag and a value proposition, it would be very difficult to take them to market.
Yeah.
The field in engineering that did that was industrial engineering. So hence my transition. So I got my PhD in industrial and systems engineering at Georgia Tech. And then you might say, why are you in a business school?
Yeah.
Well, when I graduated, and my advisor said, well, you should go to the University of Chicago and teach there.
Yeah.
And I said, well, but they're a business school. So he said, no, it's a discipline-based school. So people are trained in the discipline, but apply those tools in management.
Right.
So I started off at the University of Chicago. It did not have an engineering school, but it had economists. So I picked up a lot of economic tools, and an economist views the world differently than an engineer.
Why do you think so?
An economist thinks of the world as an equilibrium. So if you're a free market economist, you say, things happen because the prices and the environment enable it to happen.
Right.
In other words, the economist thinks about the world in equilibrium. The engineer thinks about changing something in a particular spot, not worrying about whether this is an equilibrium. They're saying, as long as I improve this, this is what happens. So an economist views the engineer as enabling the equilibrium, but doesn't worry about the technical details. So these are two different perspectives.
But there's an intersection.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the role of engineers, operations researchers, operations management, supply chain people like me in a school of management. So I started there. I moved to Purdue University because at Purdue there was a very large engineering school, and I could do a lot of combined projects with faculty.
Which year, sir?
So I moved, I started in 1987 at the University of Chicago, and 1996 I moved to Purdue. I was there at Purdue from 1996 to 2022.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I just moved to the University at Buffalo as the Dean of the School of Management in 2022. And one of the things to think about, and all of us who spend our time in universities, there's always a question that's driving you. And what I find useful is to ask myself on Friday each week, what did I learn this week?
What did you learn the last week?
So if I think about what I learned last week I was looking at, we are writing a proposal on, for example, how hydrogen can be part of a solution here in University at Buffalo's North Campus.
Okay.
So that's the question.
Wow.
Now, the answer to that question is we have a team of people, which include faculty from material informatics, faculty here in the School of Management, partners in our Director of Sustainability, as well as partners such as a local gas providing company.
Right.
All thinking about what capital investments we might make to enable us to decrease our carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Now, you might ask, why think about hydrogen? The world is going to electricity. Well, the problem with electricity, particularly when you have harsh winters, is that you have to think about resilience of your energy supply.
Yeah.
So hydrogen provides, hydrogen, natural gas, etc., they enable you to continue to have heat, etc., even if the grid goes down.
Right.
Okay. So it's part of a solution.
Yeah.
So just as one can think about, what is your plan B, if you ask. This is a potential plan B. So part of what we've been doing last week, all the way through this week, is really create a proposal to the state for us to use the campus, collect all the data from the campus regarding the existing pipeline structure, flow rates, etc., have an understanding at the atomic level of interactions between hydrogen atoms and all of this equipment, but then take the perspective from an economic perspective, saying what capacity investments can we make so that the campus can take advantage of cost advantages in hydrogen generation.
Brilliant.
Wow. That's what I learned last week. Yes.
So, sir, you came to University of Buffalo. Now, we have a lot of candidates in the Futurense US pathway who are good quality candidates who have many options. Now, what made you choose University of Buffalo? You can talk to us a bit about the university as a whole, the city where we are in, and finally, how was your first day here?
Yeah, so first, the university as a whole is a very collaborative university. And this collaborative spirit reflects the spirit of the region. So Buffalo is a place, it's a city of good neighbors, right? Which means if you need something, there's somebody who'll come by to help you. This happens both through a combination of history, history, the weather, etc., etc. It's also, if you roll back in history, in the early, it's probably about 1920, 1930, it was the potentially 6th wealthiest town in the United States.
Really?
And the way you can see it is if you look at architectural buildings built by Frank Lloyd Wright. This is an absolutely amazing collection of those buildings. It's also the place where the first transmission of electricity took place with hydroelectric power. And if you take a visit to Niagara Falls, you can see the actual location and the actual machine that was driven by Tesla's design where this happened. So there is a history. Okay. Now, things are different now, primarily because there was a physical infrastructure change. Buffalo's prominence came from waterways, and most of the trade was happening through waterways. When waterways shifted to rail, its advantage as a location diminished, and that caused a lot of flow of manufacturing. But given the fact that it was a center of manufacturing for many cases, there's a lot of absolutely wonderful architecture, and there is this notion of collaboration that's inherent in the region. So one of the things you'll see at the University at Buffalo is this collaborative spirit between the schools. Now, many people would have heard about universities and silos and other things. The way these silos get broken is really at the human level. Silos don't get broken because somebody wrote a computer program. It happens because coordination happens at a human level. And the human level means you pitch in when somebody else is busy. You don't complain that they're not available. You say, hey, today you're busy. I understand. I'm going to jump in and do things. Tomorrow I'll be busy and you'll jump in. And that's what neighbors do. That's what friends do. So there is this collaborative spirit. How does it manifest itself in a university? This collaborative spirit means, just as an example, we have an MBA program, right? there are 29 different partnerships across the university to enable you to get an MBA.
Wow.
You can get a JD MBA with a law school. You can get an MD MBA with a medical school. You can get a Master of Social Work MBA. You can get a D-Pharm MBA. What does those MBAs / mean? The students in your class come from all of those disciplines.
Yep.
And because they come from all of those disciplines, everybody gets to learn from them. Having a surgeon in a class, sitting next to a lawyer in class, to a social work member, imagine that they're doing a case study together.
Yeah.
Surely there's a lot of learning happening. So in some sense, this is the intellectual vibrancy that we offer. This ability to have diverse professional perspectives in the classes. So that's what I would call special about the university ecosystem. Whatever we do as a School of Management is very similar to what every other dean does. There are a total of 12 deans. We have a lot of interactions, and these interactions is a constant back and forth, very much what anybody would find in a company. Work gets done in companies primarily because the managers start finding ways to leverage interactions, leverage conversations, etc. So value creation is not a mechanical process of widget making. Value creation is far more than widget making. I really say that management is about imagination as much as it's about transactions.
Yeah.
And the imagination is what could be, and how do you get people enthusiastic about this what could be. My personal feeling is that's what's special. So this is the city UB. Now if you look at the school, I already told you our connection with the rest of campus. What you will see similarly, every School of Management really consists of multiple departments,
right,
with multiple different disciplines. There's finance, accounting, organizational behavior, marketing, management science and systems, and operations management and strategy. These are separate departments, right? How do these departments come together? Well, the same spirit of people interacting manifests itself within the department. And from my perspective, my role is to enable the whole to be greater than the sum of the parts. Managers really do that. In other words, part of what I tell a lot of my students is one of the most important roles of management is coordination, because the technical execution is done by various people. The manager is not an engineer, the manager is not a psychologist, etc., etc. But what is this value creation in a firm above and beyond a collection of people? This value creation is this imaginative solutions and creative solutions. So part of what we've done as a school through our conversations is chosen to focus on 4 strategic initiatives.
Sure.
One of them is called the business of climate change. Focus on the word business of climate change. I really think that the climate change related carbon footprint mitigation is an opportunity for new businesses to be created and for businesses to increase their competitiveness. Imagine a firm where people start getting interested in how is your energy generated, but you happen to be an apparel manufacturing firm. All of a sudden you say, well, if I can change the way my energy is generated and invest in solar panels or wind energy or something, I can claim that I'm using green energy and thereby increase my competitiveness in the shirt manufacturing business. Who knew? Right?
Correlation, right?
So those connections make it interesting. So that's the business of climate change. In other words, climate change is important for business schools and business school students to think about. The second is the social impact of management, right? Which is that we exist because society gives us the right to exist as a firm. Well, what is our impact? What are the different metrics of success? What is our impact on the community? What is an impact on quality of jobs? This doesn't mean you take your eye away from the ball of delivering value. But considering these other options, I believe, increases the value proposition, increases the goodwill, and in many cases, goodwill with the community you exist in makes the business side of the equation much easier.
So sort of like shareholder versus stakeholders.
Absolutely.
Something like
absolutely. So the shareholder is just one of the stakeholders. I would argue that taking care of the rest of the stakeholders might actually increase shareholder value.
Yeah.
Because only focusing on the shareholder is too myopic. It's not the whole story. This again goes back to, if you think about all the stakeholders, the shareholder might get more value. So that is the social impact of management. The third is business analytics. Okay, it's well known that tools such as optimization, AI, statistics, etc., are important, but they're not the whole story.
Yeah.
So a well-trained business school student would be aware of the technical tools, but be aware of the social impact. So this allows sort of a coordination with those. And finally, nothing takes away from the fact that for a business to be successful, you need innovation, entrepreneurship, and leadership. Because left to themselves, people will be doing certain things that they were in fact told to do and other things. The leader is the one who creates this dream, takes the risk, and figures out entrepreneurial solutions. So we as a school have chosen these 4 strategic initiatives. So a student who's here gets to, of course, learn the technical details in their discipline, as they should, but also gets to partake of our efforts on all of these strategic initiatives. And these initiatives bring together all the departments. So, for example, if you think about the business of climate change, you say, who would work in this area? Well, as an operations management and a supply chain person, I might think about, how do I ensure, recycled content? How do I minimize my energy footprint? But a finance faculty member might ask, depending on where your plants are located and your exposure to tornadoes, hurricanes, etc., what is the risk, risk cost attached, and how can you communicate an ability to manage that risk, right? And so there are, and if you're an accountant, you might look at ESG reporting, because ESG reporting is mandated in some cases. It's a nice to have. It might be a way for your CEO to show leadership. All of these are connected. And then finally, if you think about consumer behavior, the environmental impact of a firm is really the result of choices being made by everybody who's thinking about, do I switch off this light when I leave the room? Do I put things in the right recycling bin? All of those are choices. Now, we just took one question and had multiple ways to look at it. I think a manager who's exposed to those multiple ways figures out a way to ask more nuanced questions. And this is the competitive benefit that we as a school offer. Yes, I have colleagues at many other universities, and students should consider them. I would never tell them not to. But if a student says, I want to get, of course, I'll get the same level of technical training, but then what? What is it that drives me? Do any of these questions drive me as a person? Because that drive has to last you, hopefully, 30 to 50 years in your career. That is the part that we want to showcase for the student. And they can see prototypes of what these things are, talk to alumni who are very dedicated to the school. We're trying to basically provide a sort of at least some prototypes of how you bring it all together to have an impact.
So when we talk about MS and Business Analytics, the Futurense US Pathway program, people are curious about why is the demand for business analytics increasing? From a business viewpoint, if you could guide us, why is it increasing?
So one thing that has changed, you might argue that data has always been available, but data not of this level of magnitude and this level of granularity. Just consider, for example, what happens if we shop on the web. Okay, every click, every move of your mouse is recorded. Now think about the volumes of data, and then add to it that cookies gets installed. So not only the volumes of data of what you did on my site, but this cookie has followed you to all the other sites. So in some sense, it's almost as if you're seeing this consumer's choice process. Most of the time in the past, you saw this consumer's decision regarding purchase. But the choice process peels away a layer and gets you to look at what else did this consumer consider? What products did they consider? What stores did they consider? Why did they find? So this is an order of magnitude increase in the data. But as you might expect, having a lot of data doesn't generate value in of itself. You just generated the data. The business analytics is basically to try to take that data and convert it into actionable decisions. As the data increases, the need for people who can convert it to actionable information increases. Now you might say, why is it just for the big firms? Just to exist and to be competitive.
Yeah.
This is hygiene.
Yeah.
You need it, right? Just as nobody would ask, do you have a website? Everybody has it, right?
Right.
But 25 years ago, that was not the case.
Yeah.
So this is why the role of business analytics is increasing. You might ask, well, why is it sitting in the business school?
Yeah, that's my major question, sir, because a lot of people ask us that.
Yes.
This is a technical thing.
Yeah.
What does this have to do with business?
So the difference is that you have a bunch of data. You could have a statistician run a whole bunch of regressions, time series, etc., give you an output. That doesn't make it actionable information. It becomes actionable if one can think about the economic consequences. And the economic consequences either come on the supply side, which is costs, etc., or on the demand side, pricing. If you can find, if you're a bank, and people are applying for, let's say, a mortgage, if you can process that and give them a rate quote quickly, that's generating a top line growth. So the business analytics function in a business school is looking at both a top line improvement from a competitiveness perspective, as well as the supply side cost improvement, and the combination gives you a bottom line benefit, right? That perspective as to not just I process the data, but I linked that to a business decision, and I supported a manager making the decision, is why that function sits in a business school. So what it means is that we may not be doing all the details of the technical development of a regression method, but we would be doing the adaptation of that to different industries. That's the logic to think about.
A lot of techies, they are considering this as a MS program.
Yes.
And for them, the question is that as a techie, should I get into business analytics? What is your take on that?
My feeling is the following. So, think back to the way I framed my journey, right? I enjoyed doing mechanical engineering, but I figured out that that was just half of the equation. I could come up with the best tool, but till I got a manager to take that tool and use it because they got business value, the tool is something that would sit on a shelf. The question is, do you want to get the other half of the equation? Now, you might say, well, I'm just going to develop the tool and give it to a manager. The problem is, why do you not want to be that manager? Because when you give it to that manager has to do a bunch of analysis. If you truly believe in this tool, you want to take it to the finish line. So that's the part which I would get people to consider. Do I want, nothing against the technical development of the tool, absolutely. But the technical development of the tool, you've done half the job. If you're interested in the other half of the job, we are also balancing technical detail with business need to make the business case and pull in all the data together. That's the role of this degree. And that's what I would consider. Students who are exploring that. So for example, let's suppose that there's a student with a great technical tool who wants to start a company. What does it take to start a company? Well, at some point you've got to convince a bank to give you money or private equity to give you money. You've got to convince the customer to buy the product. You've got to build the supply chain to actually make and distribute the product. And then you need a whole army of people to hire, to provide customer service, etc. Are these things you've already considered when you develop the software? And if the answer is no, that's really where a business school or school of management comes.
So, sir, with AI and Chat GPT, then that is my understanding that a lot of these technical jobs would go away. But jobs around business analytics, where you said the context, the complexity of problem is higher, I believe the future is greener. Do you agree?
Well, yeah. Well, I don't think I don't think the technical jobs go away. Okay, and the reason is that it's actually more difficult to validate the output of an AI program. So imagine that the AI program gave you an output. The manager will ask, where did you get that from? The current AI tools cannot tell you how they reach that answer. Okay, they just give you an answer, right? So I think a different kind of technical tools will happen. Some of the more sort of cookie cutter ones will become easier and automated. But this has always been the journey of technology. Many of us, I mean, these days, those of us who started much earlier, we had punch cards where we would literally sit and punch those.
You've done that?
I've done that.
Really?
Right, at IIT Bombay. But nobody does that anymore.
Wow.
In fact, I think most kids won't even recognize a punch card. But what happened? We're doing more sophisticated things.
Yeah.
Almost everybody has access to Excel.
Yeah.
So actually, when you use Excel, you're doing programming. You just don't realize it, right? Because the programming is in a format closer to what people are used to. So one of the things I believe that the newer AI tools have done is making the programming closer to conversational language. All that will happen is more people will have access to programming. So then a greater level of technical competency will be required. So there will be technical challenges, etc. The part that is interesting is a greater openness to use tools. So if you roll back the clock 50 years ago, there was something called VisiCalc and other things way before Excel came. Now, almost everybody knows Excel. They use it for various purposes. The level of detail might vary. The same thing will happen with respect to natural language input and output with computers, right? You can tell your computer something. Now, these days, if you have, whether it's Alexa or Google or whatever it is, you can say, okay, Google, tell me this thing. Okay, Google, what is the weather, etc. Your voice is being transcribed, an answer is being generated and given to you. More and more of that will become common. This just means that the days of people putting in a URL or something would be replaced to people asking questions and getting answers. So the interface to the internet changes. Companies have to adjust to that. That's where the business analytics side comes in. So a way to sort of think about it is, where would the world logically transition to? Our current modes are very much like my punch card analogy for computer programs. Nobody thinks about it. Our next modes is we have QR codes, URLs, etc., an individual interaction with a website. If you just use the Chrome, Google's Chrome edition, SGE, I use it with my Chrome. It just asks, would you like an experimental generative AI summary of your search results? Click that. It goes through all of your search results and creates a summary along with a citation if any numbers are provided there. This saves you a lot of time. But what happens when you save time? The expectation regarding value delivered increases. So in the grand scheme of things, I think a way to think about it is the value that every individual employee will be expected to deliver will increase. And universities train students to be ready to deliver that value. And that value generation is that more technical tools combined with business need, which will be aligned with the competitive needs of the firm. That's really the excitement
I think
in the space.
Listening to you, a lot of people are now very excited about this MS in Business Analytics. At a top level, if you could tell us some the areas that are covered in the program,
yes.
That would be great.
Yeah. So of course you would start. This is a program that assumes that the starting point is somebody who has a variety of technical degrees of some form or the other. To begin with, this is a STEM certified degree, and this is a particularly US government related context, saying if you spend 2 consecutive semesters in a US university and you get a STEM certified degree, STEM is of course science, technology, engineering and mathematics, then you're permitted to work for at least 3 years based on the STEM OPT classification in the US. So that it's a STEM certificate. What does that mean? That means that you are provided technical training. So you will take courses in statistical methods, database systems, various tools of that kind, IT assurance, all of those tools. But we also have a very strong team focused on cybersecurity, for example. So students can take those courses as electives. We actually are National Security Agency has certified UB as an official cybersecurity site, because we train students to basically think through how do you protect a company from cyber attacks. Now, these were things you might think about and from a sci-fi perspective, but this is real. This is very real in that if a company does not have, we at UB have a strategy to protect against cyber attacks.
Really?
We buy insurance against cyber attacks. Every faculty member's laptop, there is a restriction on what you can load on the laptop so that we can create this electronic wall. And if there is any attack, it's immediately tracked so that we can take action. So this is an example of a particular specialization. But there are also opportunities we're creating for students whereby we just started something called a project clinic. The project clinic is an opportunity for students to be working on applied projects. And whenever we can, we actually pay the students as part of this thing for solving problems in applied context. Just to give you an idea of the 7 different projects involving about close to 20 students, this is going to keep scaling up, about 17 to 20 in the fall, 17 to 20 in the spring, and then this will start growing. So there are a lot of hospitals locally. The hospital systems, including the C-suite, said, we're drowning in a lot of data, but we want to convert it into actionable information that we can act on. So what's an example of actionable information? Imagine that you're looking at patients going through a hospital system. If you're getting reimbursed by healthcare organizations in the U.S., you actually get a flat reimbursement per medical treatment. If somebody comes in with a cardiac bypass surgery, you're given a fixed amount of money. You take care of all the costs. Now, what should you do? The goal is to get people in and out. And you're also responsible for all costs 30 days after they're discharged, even if they don't take their medicine.
Very complicated.
So think about the challenge for the surgeon. The surgeon has to figure out a way to have all of the data ready, to have the intervention and take care of all the risks, to potentially manage a nurse practitioner following up with them, are you taking your medicine? What are your readings, etc. All of this has to be brought together to manage the economics of this hospital. So part of what these people say is, we have a lot of data. Can you please help us? Can you please help us forecasting the patient's length of stay? If you forecast the patient's length of stay, we can forecast our capacity needs. We can forecast the medical inventory. We can forecast all of our costs. That's an example. But we also have an ERP company here in town called Odoo. And Odoo is, just like SAP has ERP, Odoo is a company from Belgium, which is headquartered here in Buffalo, New York. So we have a few students in a team who are actually doing client-facing business solution implementation. This is an opportunity before you graduate to say, I have worked with 2-3 clients, here are the things we did, here is the ebb and flow of how ERP. So these are the kinds of opportunities that we're creating as part of the program. So both technical details, specialization in things like cybersecurity, application context, and plus you have access to most of the courses in the School of Management. So, last time I checked, we had 550 different courses across all the disciplines. And as a business analytics student, if you're interested in taking a course or two on leadership, well, that's available. If you're interested in a study abroad, you can do a study abroad. We have study abroad to Costa Rica, to Italy, to wherever. We also have a visit to the 50 states. So we go to Silicon Valley and go to various companies there. You sign up for that. We go to New York and visit all the financial companies. So in some sense, you should really, I think students should think about it in terms of, there's a portion of the menu that is required for us to guarantee a certain capability. And then imagine the rest of the salad bar where you get to pick what you want.
Wow.
So every student can potentially customize the degree. So imagine you start off with vanilla ice cream, and then you added sprinkles, and then you added a chocolate swirl. You make your ice cream the way you want
So
it.
beautifully explained.
And I want students to think of that. Rather than think about what degree do you offer me, you say, what degree do I want for myself? And what each person wants, from our perspective, our focus is on individual student success. So we are, as I call it in my literature, a batch size of one, right? Because if that individual student is dissatisfied, it doesn't matter what anything else is, right? How would that individual student be satisfied? They would say, okay, here are the requirements, tell me all of the options, give me information about those options, and enable me to get access to all of them. And tell me upfront what it's going to cost me. So we're a state university, you know, the goal for us is access, not just to the inhabitants of New York State, but the whole world. So one of the things to think about is, can I get the same level of choice, the same level of dedicated faculty, and a competitive price? And finally, a strong placement service.
Because at Futurense US Pathway, placement is something we're working very deeply on.
Yes.
And Buffalo, like fantastic placement. How have you done it? Like, what is the sauce? What is the
First, we have an absolutely wonderful team. Okay. And that team focuses from day one on getting students to really think for themselves, what do I want to do? Okay. Once you start, I mean, one of the things that I think some of our staff tell me is really the way to think about it is, how do you design your own career? And once you have that strategic mindset, you can then spend your time positioning yourself for that. It does help that we have a whole bunch of alumni. UB as a university has over 260,000 alumni in over 150 countries, right? So where people go is where they would choose to work. But part of the question is, how do you leverage it? Just telling you if 260,000 alumni doesn't help. How do we leverage it? That's the role of our career services. Our career services trains people to think, plan, and then build a career strategy. And I think that career strategy is what enables a lot of success. Now, don't get me wrong, we don't have jobs folders that we give people. But what we enable people is to connect with this process, because at the end of the day, students will quickly realize it's not that they need a job, they need a job that they would like to work with. And some people might want to start their own companies, which is fine too. That does happen primarily because through the course of their courses, they're exposed to many entities within UB, as well as opportunities to compete in entrepreneurship competitions. So there are courses in which being taught by faculty in terms of applications to specific contexts. So students interested in that, these are electives. You can connect to that, start dreaming up an application, and then and then move on. Sometimes students team up with other students on campus in engineering, because we do have a data science program, we have computer engineering, etc., etc. So that's the way I would think of the journey of a student.
So there are a lot of Fortune 500 companies that come here. Can you tell us some of your top employers that like to recruit from you?
So the best way is actually to get all of the data from our website. But pick your list of the Amazons and the Facebooks and the Googles and so on and so forth. Now, I must say that in today's economy, there's been a reduction in some of those companies hiring just because of the transitions happening. And I don't want to make light of it. But earlier we discussed the fact that business analytics is not just companies in the information systems domain. Business analytics is really all the companies. A hospital needs business analytics. A retailer needs an insurance company, a bank. So if you look away from, I think, to call them the FANG companies or other things, Facebook, Apple, Google, etc., and you now get a much wider swath of companies. So all the details regarding placement success, etc., is there on our website, and I would actually strongly encourage students. more information is good, gathering the information by yourself is good, and so that is important. But the other thing to note is that given the fact that we have an alumni base, the alumni networks also help students tremendously. So we can look up which are the students in this particular company. As if you even look at, I'm not saying that students should live in Buffalo, but if you look at Buffalo itself, we have a large bank, M&T Bank. M&T Bank has 750 of our alumni at various levels.
750?
750. And so, yeah, you have access to that. And we've had several CEOs of local companies who started very much like these students as students here, got an internship, and then used that internship to start working at a company, then went up in the company, got an opportunity to be hired as a CEO of a company, then expanded that company, and now create opportunities for our students. So there is that ecosystem that is also possible. So I think if students basically say, I'm going to look more at where I can continue to hone my skill set in application, the list is a lot greater. And that list is what I would say, which is why I think business analytics is a very compelling option because it affords that flexibility. And being in a business school allows you to basically say, hey, let's suppose you say, I'm particularly interested in information systems and analytics applied to the hospital field. I would say do a web search and you would find that Palantir has been hired by the Cleveland Clinic to help them optimize their business systems and data. Well, Palantir is a well-known company in this field. 10% of its revenues are coming from healthcare. Somebody might say, hey, healthcare is a requirement just like food is a requirement and shelter is a requirement all over the world. These are examples of things that students can think of.
The way you have explained everything, so many, like hundreds of people would be like excited, good candidates would be excited. Now, what is your one final piece of advice to the Futurense US pathway candidates aspiring to come here to do MS in business analytics?
I would say focus on value creation. Business rewards value. If you're not creating value, don't expect value. So value creation is the passion, the problem solution approach, the intellectual heft that you bring to the table. That's the key. And if every student says, how do I create value in this world? And value creation is a very individual decision. Value is not just money, could be money. Value could be the number of people I impact. Value could be various other metrics. Value could be the carbon footprint that I decrease. Whatever value creation is, it's beneficial for each student to think about value creation. And I think that encapsulates a lot of it. You know, what do I bring to the team and what value do I bring up? Our goal is to enable students to provide this value synchronized with the environment they're in. So I would say one word, value.
Perfect.
Okay. The same question applies to us as a school. What value do we create for the students? Because as a dean of the school, my goal is to harness all of the faculty and staff we have here. But the value creation happens for that student. And so, as a student, you should challenge us to say, this is my definition of value. How are you going to help me maximize the value that you create for me? Part of my responsibility is to answer that question effectively. And I say, if any student comes here and they want an answer to that question, if I'm not working, my door is always open. I would say, come knock on my door and ask me and just challenge me. I think that, I actually think it's perfectly logical. Whenever I teach a class, I tell the students, at any point if you say, why am I learning this and what value does it bring? I said, please feel free to raise your hand and ask it. You have that right. Okay? And it's my responsibility to answer the question. The same is true for us as a school. Every student has the right to ask, how are you helping me create the value? And first thing I would ask is, so tell me in your mind, what value are you trying to create? So you tell me. And part of my goal is to see to it that we're organized to do that. That's really what my responsibility is, and I'm hoping the students realize that that's what their responsibility will be when they go out into the world. And the only thing as a passing comment I would say is value is defined at a very individual level. It is not a pat answer, I made X dollars or I impacted this, and there's no pecking order that one is different from the other.
Yeah.
It's an individual choice. Whatever you define as value is the value we want to help you create.
So, I have one last final personal question.
Okay.
When we look at your journey, it's an inspiration to many. What do you think is that one or two things that you attribute your success to?
Well, certainly having a family that's supporting you all through is the key. Things don't happen in a vacuum. We're not like creatures who are out there doing things by ourselves. So clearly, I thank my wife and our two daughters and they're supportive primarily because they share ideas with me, etc. So there's that. The second is to really think of relationships with colleagues, with people you report to, with friends, etc. Not as transactions, but truly as relationships. Relationships mean you give and get. And when you give, you're not looking at what you're going to get back. You give because that's the right thing to do. So it'll be surprising how much you can learn from every person you interact with. Whether it's a person sitting next to you in the airplane, or somebody you met at a wedding, or somebody you met at a party, or whatever it is, there's a lot that people can share with you. And part of it is the humility to learn. Because learning requires you to accept that you don't know. Right? And as long as you have, a little bit of humility all the time helps greatly, because it allows you to learn. And it's that learning that allows you to keep generating value. So yeah, you need to accept, one needs to accept the role of family as this context within which you're operating. But also the rest of your interactions and this idea of relationships. Most of learning is a goodwill business.
Yeah.
If people care about you, they'll come tell you all sorts of interesting things. They'll point out when you're making a mistake. They'll point out when they're giving you something, mainly because you've helped them avoid pitfalls. There are many ways to view the world. I do not view the world from a political lens.
Fair enough.
I'm not here to score brownie points. I'm not scared. But that doesn't mean for each his own. And this doesn't mean you're naive. It just means that particularly people you've helped you, it's you can help them back. If it requires you to scramble, you scramble. And so there is this idea that I'm going to sit and complain about the world. And my question with all of this: so what are you going to do about it? Okay, just say there's a problem. What are you going to do about it? So I'm upset. Okay,
solve it.
Been there, record it. What are we going to do? And I think that perspective can help one continue to learn. This is a learning game in any profession, and as long as one recognizes learning game, things fall apart when you become the know-it-all. The moment you become a know-it-all, that surely cannot be true. And I think this idea that you can, one of the words I use a lot is intellectual arbitrage. Okay? And that is the idea that there might be tools in one domain that this other domain doesn't even know about. All you're doing is allowing idea flow from A to B. How do you get an opportunity to increase intellectual arbitrage? Know a lot of people, know a lot of fields, and learn from people. And people might tell you, hey, did you hear about XYZ? I've never heard about this before. Let me apply it to this other context. So that's a way. There's a lot to learn. That's why one reads newspapers, reads this thing, reads that thing, interacts with people. So I say, if you think about family, focus on goodwill and learning.
Wow. Well, so you'll
be all set.
This is brilliant, sir. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.